Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for June 21st through 27th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 2 shows, I watched 2 movies, and I listened to 1 audiobook. We'll get there. First this week I finished The Wicked Bargain. This one is about a non-binary pirate whose father made a deal with the devil when they were born that everything would be fine until they were 16 and then their papa would have to go with the devil, although his legacy would live on. Growing up, Mara thought this was just a story and had other things to worry about, such as the magic that they possess, that they can use on the ship because everyone on the ship knows about it, but they can't use it out in the wider public because somebody might see them and bad things might happen because all of that has happened in the past. However, on their 16th birthday, there's a really big storm, and who do they meet but El Diablo? From there, we've got pirate raids, we've got heists, a little bit of a romance, a really cheeky demon that shows up every once in a while, really trying to make a deal, and I ended up very much enjoying my time with this one. Mars magic was also just so interesting because they kind of basically have a spidey sense. They know when something's about to go really, really wrong, but then they also have the power of fire and the power of ice. And essentially, if they don't use their magic, it kind of builds up, and they just can't stand being in their own body because of it, and they have to let off some steam, as it were. This book is queer and anti-colonial and set in the 1800s in the Caribbean, and it was a really good time. The other book I read this week is Several People Are Typing, and I literally sat down yesterday to start reading it and read the whole thing because this is written exclusively in Slack chats. If you're not familiar with Slack, it's an app used by a lot of different offices. You have different channels for different topics. So in this book, every time you change a chat group, it would kind of tell you at the top of it being like, now we're in the New York office Slack, now we're in the Slack just between these 3 characters, etc. And essentially the biggest thing that has happened at the beginning of this book is one of the users has actually been sucked into Slack and is saying, I can't come into work because I'm literally in Slack, and of course nobody believes him. But after quite some time of working from home, he actually convinces his nearest coworker to actually go check on his body, and it goes from there. However, that's not the only weird thing that happens. We have an AI gaining some form of sentience, we have a coworker who maybe just disappears and only one person remembers who she is, and then we have some fun interpersonal drama between the different people that work in this office. Again, because of the format of this one, it was a really, really quick read, and it was really engaging, so I wanted to continue reading, and I can't believe I read the whole thing in one sitting last night. It was also queer and heavily steeped in office culture and just the kind of wording that you would get from somebody above you where they're trying to get you to do something and they don't actually answer the questions you have for them. And it also speaks to company spin and influencing, and it was just a really fun time. As for the shows I watched well more than a season of Criminal Minds. I started out in the 4th season at the 8th episode and got to the 5th season, the 18th episode. Here's my thing, at this point I think I'm still going to see a fair amount of episodes here and there that I've seen before on cable but not seen in a row. However, at this point, the big events that happen to the main cast of characters, especially the things that happen over a multi-episode arc, I've seen all of those. For example, and the thing that most recently concluded from my memories of watching this previously is how it all ends for Hotchner and his ex-wife and his son. I definitely remember seeing that episode with only a little bit of context because I don't know if I had seen all of the episodes with that particular killer before. However, watching it all the way through like this broke my heart even more for that episode. Additionally, I think it was the last episode I watched, maybe an episode previous, that just had all of the feelings of a pilot episode for a different show, and when I looked it up, it was a backdoor pilot for a spin-off series called Criminal Minds Suspect Behavior, I think it was called. I looked it up, it only got 1 season, it only got 13 episodes, and it was cancelled due to low ratings, but it starred Forrest Whitaker, and it had Richard Schiff in it as their director, which he was not in this episode, but I really like that dude from West Wing, so I would have been all over this show if I knew it was a thing at the time. I actually didn't have cable when this actually came out. So yeah, not only is there a new spin-off series that I know just recently started happening, but it turns out there were 2 previous to that, and this one only lasted a season. I don't know about the other one, I haven't looked into it yet. But now I'm going to have to try to track down these 13 episodes because I kind of liked this team. The other show I watched this week I also watched an entire season of, however it was only a 6-episode season, so very, very doable, and that was Fate the Winx Saga. I had never heard of this before. My best friend was like, hey, have you seen this? Because I went over and hung out, and I was like, no, I don't even know what it is. And she's like, I'm just gonna put it on. It's fairies. You'll enjoy it. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It was also really cheesy, and it was also really interesting to just be like, how come none of these people talk to each other? If they just kind of talk to each other, we might understand more of what's happening. Especially because this whole thing is about this one girl named Bloom who grew up in the human world but is now going to the fairy world to go to this college. And up until pretty recently, she didn't know she had magic. She has human parents, so like, what the heck? And there was no briefing before she went to this school as to like things she should know before she goes to this school, such as, hey, there's a perimeter around the school that you probably shouldn't cross because on the other side are bad things. You would think this would be stuff that would be in the orientation package. Nope. So there was a lot of miscommunication, there was a lot of kind of cheesy writing in this. It was enjoyable though, because you just want to know who's actually lying and who's not, and this managed to do a lot over a 6-episode arc, and it leaves it in a really bad place where you're just like, oh no, what's gonna happen next? I also really enjoyed that one of the headmasters is also one of the guys from Downton Abbey, the servant that you don't really like because he's kind of a jerk, and then you kind of learn why he might be a bit of a jerk and you feel a little bit sorry for him. That servant, Barrow was his name. I can't remember what his name in this was. It started with S's, but I can't remember. I think Silva was the last name. Saul was the first name. There we go, I got it. As for the movies I watched this week, I wasn't planning on watching this one, but it just started while I was making some food. I sat down and I guess I was just watching it with my roommates because I didn't leave until it was over, and that was Django Unchained. This is one of those movies where I didn't know really anything about it going into it. However, as soon as the violence started, I was pretty sure it was a Tarantino film, and oh heck yes, it was a Tarantino film. This also has an amazing cast. We have Jamie Foxx, we have Kerry Washington, we have Samuel L. Jackson, we have Leonardo DiCaprio, we also have Walton Goggins. I had to look up the cast while I was watching it because sometimes I'm like, who is that person? And that person in particular in this case was James Remar, who you might know as Dexter's dad on Dexter, because I certainly do, but I think he had also recently showed up as a side character on one of the episodes of Criminal Minds as well, so I really enjoyed seeing that parallel in my watching life. Anyway, this film is about the titular character Django, and he starts out as an enslaved man in this film, and then he is bought by this guy who says he's a dentist but is actually a bounty hunter, and then he's freed, and then he starts working with him as a bounty hunter, and after a season of doing this he's like, okay, now we're going to try to track down where they sold your wife to so we can go save her. And they do. And things happen. Like I said, if you're familiar with the ridiculous way in which gore and violence are done in Tarantino films, you'll be able to spot this as a Tarantino film pretty quickly. And the performances by the cast members that I've already mentioned were wondrous. The other film I watched this week is A Quiet Place Day 1. If you are familiar with the Quiet Place movies, essentially what has happened, and I won't ruin it for people who haven't seen the previous movies, is one day something happened on Earth and these really big scary creatures were just there and killing everything that made sound. The first movie took place like a year into this whole situation, or maybe even more than that. I can't remember exactly how many days, but it tells you exactly how many days. The second movie kind of flashed back a little bit, and we actually get to see one of the main characters from that in this, which was interesting. And our main character in this one is actually a woman who's in hospice care, and she is kind of cajoled to go into the city with some people to go see a show that day. And she's like, I don't really want to go, but I will go if we get pizza after, because if I'm going all the way to the city, I'm not leaving without getting pizza. So her nurse is like, fine, we will get pizza. So they go and then they watch this show, but then they're kind of recalled back to the hospice, and she's really bummed because she wanted her pizza. However, before the bus can get very far whatsoever, everything goes to shit. These creatures show up, masses of people die, so much property damage, and it just becomes a quest for her and her cat companion to find pizza before she dies, because she doesn't have much time anyway. This, again, was great. Really well acted, lots of jump scares. It's a very scary type of movie. Whoever gets to be Foley artists on these movies, I bet they're just so excited about it because the sound is such an intricate part of these movies. And yeah, highly recommend, and I'm in love with that cat. Now, as much fun as it would have been to be able to say I watched 2 books, watched 2 shows, watched 2 movies, and listened to 2 books, I think you'll understand why I only listened to 1 this week, and that's because that 1 book was War and Peace, which is a 61-hour audiobook. An audiobook is the only way I was going to get through this tome because I didn't really care. A couple of years ago, I got people to put books on a list for me to read before I turned 40, and this was the very first book that some jerk put on my list, and I was like, you know what, if there's an audiobook, I'll do it. And I looked and there was an audiobook and I was like, it's 61 hours long, but you know what, I'm tenacious. It's at the very top of the list. And I finally got around to reading it because I'm not reading the list in order, I'm just kind of reading them whenever I feel like it. And yeah. It's a thing I did, I can say I did it. This book starts out in 1805 and we see these different characters through the years. We definitely get to 1812 and more things happen. And then in the epilogue it goes even further than that, and let me tell you, an epilogue should not be 4 hours long. That's a whole other book, my friend. So essentially in this book we have a very wide cast of characters. A lot of them tend to know each other from Russian society, either that being in St. Petersburg or Moscow, because these are the kind of upper echelons of society that can actually just move between the two. They've got a house here, they've got a house there, whatever. And also, you know, serfs, they want to be working. Like, if they weren't working, you know, they would just wither up and die. So that's a whole thing. Essentially this whole book is about war and the different type of warfare there is, whether it be literal war or whether or not it's society and trying to make strategic ends in society. And this book, you might be able to understand, is just too damn long. There are too many characters, and because we kind of touch on them briefly and we don't really dive into why we should care about these particular characters, I didn't. Also, I went into this knowing that I just had to slog through it. Like, I was predisposed to not enjoy my time with this, and yeah, I didn't really. There were some good turns of phrase here and there, like there were some things that came up every once in a while where I was like, that is actually a really good line, or that type of thing, but I knew I wasn't going to enjoy my time and I just needed to get through it, so I could say that I did it. And I did. I actually started this last week and gave myself 10 days to get through it so I could finish it for this wrap-up, because I knew if I didn't I would have nothing to talk about in this section and that would make me personally really upset. So that means I listened to about 6 hours every day, and yeah, I was listening to it at 2 times speed at the beginning, and by the very end in the epilogue I was listening to it at 3 times speed because I just wanted it to end. In the epilogue it's broken up into 2 different sections, and in the first section it's talking about all these different things about the characters, like who got married, how many kids they had, whether or not they chose to breastfeed those children, and I'm like, this is information I don't need to know. And then the second half was all about these different philosophies of war, which was kind of interesting, but if you could have put more of that throughout the book, because some of it was throughout the book, and then also, you know, an editor and different formatting and characters I cared about, that would have improved my quality of life over this time. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!